Everybody, welcome to Dead Reckoning TV. I'm your host, Jay Friesen, with Dr. Brian Mattson, and today we're looking at the term FUBAR. You may have heard the military term, it's effed up beyond all repair, and how that applies to Christianity. Specifically, that Christians do believe the world is effed up, but not beyond all repair. We take death and suffering seriously, don't we, Brian?
Well, we do take misery, suffering, and death seriously. Christianity is definitely a worldview that believes in the foo part of it, but not the bar part of it. Yes, the world is a very messed up place, but it is not beyond all repair. And that's what we're going to talk about this month. You know, everybody knows there's something wrong with the world. We know this instinctively, we know it intuitively, we know it every time we watch the news or we pick up a newspaper and we see some great tragedy, a madman massacring a bunch of school children in an elementary school. And, you know, the anger rises up within us, the righteous indignation at the injustice and the savage immorality of this. Something is wrong with the world, and every worldview has to deal with what is wrong with the world. You know, Christianity has an undeserved reputation of being a religion that doesn't take suffering, misery, and death seriously. It has the reputation of being otherworldly, as though Christianity is really about going somewhere else in some spiritual realm, floating on clouds and playing harps. A lot of people think that's what it is, as though Christians, when we become a Christian and we're born again, are sitting in an ejection seat. And I'm born again, I've now pulled the lever, and I'm bailing out of here, right? Forget about the aircraft, forget about the ship, I'm on the lifeboat, whatever. I'm out of here because I'm going to go up and float on clouds and play harps. You know, I read an essay one time written by one of the great outspoken atheists in America in the 20th century, Madalyn Murray O'Hair. O'Hair hated Christianity, and she describes why in this essay. And she explains that it's because Christians are people who can't wait to die so that they can go float on clouds and play harps, and they don't care about what happens in the here and now, what happens in this world. They don't care about misery, suffering, and death, and injustice, and all of these things. And that was her perception of Christianity. And she wasn't alone. You know, Karl Marx, when he talks about religion being the opium of the people, deluding people, he thought that Christianity was selling people a bill of goods. You know, just endure all the misery, suffering, and death right now. Just endure it because, you know, when you die at some point, you're going to go off to this peaceful bliss. You see, he thought that that was an excuse to not care about this world, not care about the injustices and suffering. Well, why do I bring all that up? Because it's wrong. It's spectacularly wrong. Christianity has, as its foremost, most universally recognizable symbol. When you drive down the street and you see a church building and you see a steeple, there's something at the top of it. What is that? It's a cross. A cross is a symbol representing a grotesque, brutal instrument of execution invented by the evil Romans. This was their way of killing people. Torturing and killing people. Now, why would a religion take a symbol like that and make it their universally recognizable symbol? It's because they take misery, suffering, and death so seriously that they took an instrument of execution and they made it their number one symbol. Because Jesus fully and finally deals with sin, misery, suffering, and death on the cross. You know, one time Jesus had a good friend die. His name was Lazarus, and Jesus shows up late, and Lazarus has been buried, and he's in the tomb, and Jesus goes and stands in front of the tomb, and the shortest verse of the Bible in the Gospel of John says, Jesus wept. Not Jesus, you know, puckered out his stiff upper lip and kind of choked it down, or Jesus who's, well, he's off to a better place, you know. No, this was Jesus standing there with the reality that his friend had died. And he wept. This is a religion that takes it seriously. Here's how seriously. Jesus then says, roll the stone away. And everybody starts to get very uncomfortable. He's been in there 4 days, and the smell's not going to be so good, Jesus. they say to him. And he says, roll the stone away, because Jesus is going to look at death, look at suffering and death in the face, the gaping chasm of a tomb. He says, roll it away, and he faces it, and he says, Lazarus, come forth. Jesus is about reversing death. Jesus is about overcoming death, having the solution to misery, suffering, and death. No, it's not about going off and floating on clouds and playing harps. It's dealing with misery, suffering, and death in the here and now. That's what Jesus is about. That's what Christianity is about. You know, there really are only three options for dealing with suffering and death. There's three. You can either face it as an enemy to be faced, something to be conquered, something to be reversed. And that's what Christianity does. Or it can be something we resign ourselves to. Well, that's just the way it goes. That's just the way the world is. Or, so we can face it, we can resign ourselves, or we can deny it. It's all in our minds. It's not the real world. And we're going to look in the coming weeks at worldviews that resign themselves to suffering and death, and worldviews that deny suffering and death. And only Jesus Christ, only Christianity offers a real solution to misery, suffering, and death.
Thanks so much, Brian. And next week, we're going to be taking a look at giving suffering a hug. So please join us. If you like what you're hearing, email us at drtv@redfutonfilms.com. Subscribe to us on Facebook, YouTube, Dailymotion, Vimeo, wherever you like to watch films. And we will see you next week. I am Jay Friesen. This is Dr. Brian Mattson, and this is Dead Reckoning TV.
Count the cost. Because to the extent you say this is not a morally ordered universe, that this is just time and matter and energy and chance, you lose the right to complain. You lose the right to complain. You no longer have a high moral horse to ride. You've said there is no such horse to ride.